Hey everyone, welcome back to the Irretrievable Breakdown podcast where we discuss all things divorce. I'm Matt Dolan with Dolan Divorce Lawyers in Connecticut, and I am joined by my co-host and the managing partner of our firm, Nicole Bikakis. You can listen to us on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, or you can watch us on YouTube, and you can subscribe to us if you want to catch our show every week. Today, we are going to discuss the role of family relations in Connecticut Family Court. It's technically the Family Services Office, but people more commonly know them as family relations. But before we do that, Nicole, how's it going? You are calling in from Greece today.
I am.
What time is it over there in Greece for you?
It's 6:30
p.m. Wow. Dedication to the podcasting YouTube game we have.
That's me. Yeah.
Oh, Nicole grew up in Greece. Those of you you sort of grew up in Greece, tell us a little bit about your Greek history.
My Greek history. Well, I am born in Connecticut, originally from Connecticut, and then my family moved back to Greece when I was a kid in elementary school. So moved back and lived here just about until the end of high school. I finished my senior year of high school in Connecticut and then stayed in Connecticut for the rest of it.
Wait, when did you move back to Greece? It was in elementary school? Why did I think it was only high school that you went to school? So you went to school in Greece from when to when?
From 5th grade through 11th.
Got it. Oh, and then 12th, your senior year was back here in Connecticut?
Yep.
Nice.
Yep.
Nice.
And college, and then stayed in Connecticut.
Yeah. UConn girl. UConn undergrad, UConn law school, same as me.
Devil Huskies.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's nice to be back in Greece. Family lives here. My parents are here, and so it's nice to get to come back and work remote, and spend a little extra time here.
Nice. So how was your flight? You flew with both kids without your husband, Connor. He went a couple days later, so you were wrangling the kids. How'd the flight go? How old are your kids? What are they, like?
6.5 and 5.
All right. So how'd that go?
Yeah. Great. They're good travelers. I've been traveling with them every summer to Greece since they were born. Other than Athena, because she was a COVID baby, we missed that summer. But Tommy was 2.5 months old when he first flew here.
Wow.
They're seasoned travelers now. And they're also, I find the ages they're in right now to be really great for traveling.
That would be nerve-wracking, flying that long with a 2.5-month-old. I don't know if
it was easy. Honestly, she was harder because she was like 18 months old at that time. She was the wild card. He slept they give you a little bassinet, put them in there.
Yeah, one of those. I've never even seen one of those on a plane, let alone used one.
Oh, they're the best. When we left Greece on that trip, he fell asleep in Athens and woke up in New Haven. Like, I swear, he just slept the whole way.
That's pretty awesome.
Not bad. Yep.
I had an additional question. I can't remember what it was.
Greece so far is great.
Yes. Well, so Nicole is working remote from Greece this week, and then it's taking the next 2 weeks off. So I haven't quite figured out whether this podcast is going to go on hiatus or whether we are going to temporarily replace Nicole. I think those are big shoes to fill. I'm not even sure it's possible to, people might boycott watching this podcast if
I think with temporary replacement,
our massive following, there's going to be an outcry if you're gone for the millions of people watching this.
If you do decide to continue without me, I think your temporary replacement that you're considering will be up to the task.
Nice. All right. So anyways, let's talk about the Family Relations Office in Connecticut Family Court. So basically their role is to just help families and individuals navigate the divorce, custody, and restraining order process. So people often come into the process having like no idea what's going on. Even if they have lawyers, they have no idea where their case is going to go. Maybe they've never even had a conversation with their spouse about how they are going to resolve custody or the terms of their divorce. And family relations really gets involved pretty early on. So in most cases of custody and divorce, the first court date is called the resolution plan date. And on that date, family relations, who is essentially, they're a neutral office where they're facilitating agreements between individuals. They will meet with the parties and have an initial meeting where they'll try to get an understanding of what's going on and identify whether the parties have a full agreement on all issues. If they have had discussions early on, maybe they come in with a full agreement. So they'll identify whether they agree on everything, whether there's a partial agreement where they agree on certain things and disagree on others, or whether they just have like no agreement on anything and it's, going to be a more intensive case. And based on that conversation about how much the parties agree on, they will come up with a plan for what services the parties could benefit from the family relations office or outside parties, if there's going to be assistance needed beyond family relations. So that's sort of how they get involved early on. And then they, have a number of services that they may recommend at that resolution plan date or at a future date. So, Nicole, do you have anything to add about sort of the general idea of family relations and what they're trying to accomplish?
Yeah, just that the family relations office and the family relations counselor that you're going to meet with, they're some of the first court employees you will interact with when you file, whether it's your divorce or custody action or post-judgment motion. They are typically one of the first people you deal with in the court process, and they really help sort of in many cases, set the tone for how it's going to proceed. And you can get a lot done with them early on. So they really are a resource to people, and people should take more advantage of the time they get with family relations.
Right. So before any court date you have, you will probably first meet with family relations to see if you can reach an agreement. They might take 15, 20, 30 minutes with you to say like, all right, you don't agree on alimony that is being paid while the divorce is pending. Let's see if we can reach an agreement, get some temporary orders put in place so that you don't have to go in front of a judge and have a hearing. So they will, before any hearing, at the resolution plan date, they may have scheduled you for a alimony hearing if you don't have an agreement. And you probably at that resolution plan date will have already discussed alimony. But on the date of the hearing, they'll try to meet with you again to see if you can reach an agreement. If there's going to be any hearing, they're almost always going to be meeting with you to see if there is any hope of resolving things. Even if your case is going to trial and it's been going on for a year plus, on the date of your trial, a judge will often say like, hey, before we start, I know we're supposed to start at 10. Before we start this, go see family relations, see if there's any hope of working this out. So they are always trying to help people reach agreements. And those are, I don't even know what we would call those meetings. It's just like anytime you're going to have a meeting, you try to meet with family relations and see if you can work it out. But outside of those sort of like last minute before your court date types of meetings, they will potentially schedule you for more in-depth services. So one is just a mediation. So that is when they will schedule a specific time or multiple sessions, which is separate from your court dates where you're going in front of a judge, where they will meet with both you and your spouse or, the parent of your child if you're not married. And they will take time, they'll book an hour or 2 hours and really sit down and understand what is going on, what the two of you disagree on, why you disagree on it, what each person's position is and why. And they will try to help you reach an agreement in a more, you know, in a larger period of time. So that is one of the services that they offer. And that will be with just the parties and not their lawyers, regardless of whether or not they have lawyers. So if you're
Importantly, I think,
self-represented,
yeah.
go ahead.
I said importantly, it's typically just the parties. So it really gives the family relations officer an opportunity to speak directly to the parties and really try and suss out what is the issues that are important to them, and to try and get them to a point of resolution. And then those mediations are confidential. So anything that's discussed there, any potential settlements, that can't go before the judge ever. So that process, anything that's discussed, is confidential. So, and if it fails, you continue with the process. But if it's successful, they help you. If you have attorneys, they'll let your attorneys know what everything was agreed to, and your attorneys will draft the agreement. But if you don't have an attorney, they'll help you draft up the agreement and get that filed.
Right. And generally speaking, like any settlement negotiations are inadmissible in court. The court wants to facilitate negotiations and allow people to be open in trying to reach an agreement. So they don't want people to be able to like use what somebody said during a settlement negotiation against them in open court. So that's why those negotiations are not admissible if your case goes to trial.
At other moments in the case, potentially talk to family relations officer as part of an evaluation, and we'll get to that later. Those conversations are not confidential, but right. The conversations you have with the family relations officer when you're just trying to settle the case, whether that's before you go in for a hearing, whether that's a mediation, or whether that's just at your resolution plan date, those are typically confidential.
Right. So those conversations in a mediation, they will certainly involve custody and visitation if those things are in dispute. And they can also include the financial terms of your divorce, particularly if you and the other party don't have lawyers. They will likely get into those financial, whether it's child support, alimony, division of assets, they will get into those issues during your mediation. If you have lawyers, it's less likely that they will get into the financial stuff because the lawyers usually want to be involved in that. They're, generally speaking, lawyers kind of have a better understanding of the laws around child support, alimony, and division of assets. So it's a little harder to sort of get into those negotiations without the lawyers being present. So they will, if there are lawyers involved and they're getting into the financial stuff, they will likely schedule a separate pre-trial where family relations is helping facilitate that negotiation, but the lawyers are present for that.
Their specialty is really custody. That's in parenting issues and disputes. And child support, because it is based on a formula, they run child support guidelines and talk about child support. They're really adept at doing those things. They can, like you said, also mediate certain other financial disputes and like financial division and alimony, but that's not typically their focus. Typically their focus really is the custody, parenting issues, and child support.
Right. Those financial disputes are more likely to be with a judge, where there's a judicial pretrial, where it's a judge who's kind of hearing what both sides have to say in a confidential setting. That can't be used at trial, and it's a judge making recommendations where the judge is more educated on the laws around the financial aspects of divorce. So.
Well, and some finances are very complicated, and if it's complicated income situations, complicated assets, a family relations officer isn't going to speak to all the various considerations you'll have to deal with in resolving that dispute, and they won't be able to draft up an agreement that really deals with complicated income and assets. So and so that's why, again, their specialty really is the custody, parenting, and child support even.
Right. So if family relations is unable to help you and your spouse reach an agreement, whether, in a mediation or a pretrial with lawyers involved, they will also have the option to do evaluation. So there's really two types of evaluations. There's an issue-focused evaluation and then a comprehensive evaluation. So the issue-focused evaluation is more used when the parties really have an agreement on a lot of things. Maybe they agree on what the, joint legal custody and what the visitation schedule is going to be, but they can't agree on something like, who's going to do transportation or what, whether visitation is supervised or not. And if it is supervised, what those terms of supervision are. Maybe somebody has a safety concern about the other person's house. Maybe, they say like, oh, there's no baby gates, or, there's mold in their house. So there's not enough bedrooms for my children to be comfortable. So if it's a more narrow issue that needs to be looked into, then that issue-focused evaluation will happen, where family relations will sort of do an investigation, essentially, where they'll meet with the parties. Maybe they'll do a home visit to check out the house. They'll talk to the people who they think are relevant to help them make a recommendation about that thing which they are evaluating. And then they'll make a recommendation to the parties to help them reach an agreement. And if they can't reach an agreement, then they'll share their findings from the issue-focused evaluation with a judge during a hearing, and the judge will essentially make a decision, and that decision is binding. It's the judge making the decision, not family relations.
And issue-focused evaluations come up a lot, especially in post-judgment issues. So where custody is decided at the point of divorce or in the initial custody judgment, and then you have things that happen post-judgment, and where they are sort of like specific to a certain issue, where you're not looking for a wholesale modification of custody. You'll typically find the court referring the matter to family relations for an issue-focused evaluation. So it's really more a discrete issue versus a comprehensive custody determination.
Right. So that brings us to the comprehensive custody evaluation. And that is, when there's really a major dispute where the parties can't agree on legal custody. So who makes decisions about where the child goes to school, what doctors they go to, things like that. Or they just, can't agree on which parent has primary physical custody, or whether there's going to be a shared 50-50 parenting plan. Maybe one parent wants to relocate to another state. When there are major disputes as to the custody orders and the parties are simply unable to reach an agreement, then family relations can do that more intensive comprehensive custody evaluation. It takes several months where they are meeting with both parents. They'll do a home visit. They'll meet with the child if they think that would be helpful. They'll get any records from the school of the children, DCF if they've been involved, police records. They'll talk to the pediatrician. They'll do all sorts of, investigation and really look into the family dynamics. And then they will ultimately make a recommendation about what should happen with regard to legal custody or who should have primary physical custody, et cetera. Essentially, whatever is in dispute, they will make that recommendation, which they will share with the parties. And then if after sharing that recommendation with the parties still are unable to reach an agreement, they'll write up a full report that's, dozens of pages long with all of their findings, all of the work that they've done, and what their recommendations are. And that report will go in front of a judge during a hearing, and the judge will use that recommendation to make a decision. They don't have to do they don't have to follow the recommendation of family relations, but they're most likely going to, given the fact that family relations is a neutral party who has been deeply involved with the family and understanding what is going on.
Yeah, it's the recommendation of the family relations officer really is an opportunity to then strongly consider settlement, because although that recommendation does not equal a decision and does not indicate precisely what the future order would be, the court is going to take their recommendation seriously into consideration, and oftentimes they will more often side with them than not. So it really does inform the judge's decision, and therefore, once that recommendation comes out, it usually does provide a good point for the parties to get back together and discuss potential settlement based on that recommendation.
Right. And that comprehensive evaluation, it's very similar to what a guardian ad litem would do. And we've done a separate podcast episode that talks about a guardian ad litem's role. And it's the good thing about family relations is that you don't have to pay for it. If you're getting a guardian ad litem involved, then you're presumably paying hundreds of dollars per hour for their work. Whereas, family relations, you don't have to pay for it. Granted, a guardian ad litem can be sort of more flexible in what they're doing. And if you really need like a ton of services of looking into a ton of things, then a GAL may be better equipped to do that. But generally speaking, the family relations office is quite good in that they have a lot of, they will spend a lot of time on your case if they are doing a comprehensive custody evaluation. It's pretty impressive the work that they're able to do and what they're able to accomplish and all the information that they're able to gather.
But practically, they are spread thin, right? They do have a lot of cases and evaluations that they're handling and services they are providing. So in certain cases, it does make sense where time is an issue, and where, like you said, a lot of services are going to be required, or the evaluation is going to be extremely in depth. A GIL sometimes might be more appropriate. And then also each courthouse has its own family relations office. And so some courthouses, their family relations offices are busier than others. So you really want to talk to, if you have an attorney, you talk to your attorney about the pros and cons of utilizing the family relations office or maybe opting for a GAL. But also sometimes in certain courthouses, the judge sort of has a preference as well as to whether family relations is more appropriate or guardian ad litem it would be appropriate. At the end of the day, the judge has to refer the matter to the family relations office before they can begin any type of evaluation. So it's ultimately the judge's decision whether they're going to refer it to the family relations office or they're going to appoint a guardian ad litem in that case.
Right, exactly. So the last sort of thing that family relations does in the family law context is they also deal with restraining orders. So if somebody files a restraining order, it's either granted or denied on the papers, and that lasts a certain period of time. And then the parties both have to come in to court to decide whether the restraining order is going to extend for a longer period of time. It can be up to 1 year. So when the parties come in, family relations will meet with both the applicant and the respondent to the restraining order to try to understand what's going on, see if they can reach an agreement to either dismiss the restraining order or put a restraining order in place, what the terms of the restraining order are going to be, how long it's in place, etc. And sort of how they deal with that, it varies from courthouse to courthouse. Some courthouses will really meet with the parties and they'll meet separately on restraining orders. They won't have them in the same room. And sometimes they'll really spend time with the parties to say, like, all right, is there a way to reach an agreement? Other courthouses, they sort of leave it to the judge to handle in a hearing, and they'll just basically try to identify whether there is an agreement or not. They won't spend time trying to, bridge the gap and help the parties reach an agreement. But they will do that. And then if there is going to be a hearing on the restraining order, they'll put together a little report for the judge about whether there's any criminal or civil history between the parties, whether there's been arrests or prior restraining orders, et cetera. And then the judge can use that information to sort of help them decide whether or not they are going to keep the restraining order in place. So that's the last piece, which is sort of separate from divorce and custody.
They also do
go ahead.
education. They're the ones who monitor the parenting education course that every parent who files for divorce or a custody application has to go through in order to proceed with a judgment.
Yeah, exactly. I think they contract with private companies who administer those, but they're in charge of the curriculum and setting it up and overseeing it. But that's not anything you'll do in court. You have to do a separate out of court. I think it's a 6-hour class.
Correct.
That will
6-hour course. There are certain locations that offer it in person. There are other places that offer it online, and it's really meant to help parents who are now going to be co-parenting figure that out, educating them about parenting issues, about their children, and how conflict impacts their kids, and giving very good information to parents on how to handle their disputes and how to navigate co-parenting.
Right, exactly. So those are the basics on the role of family relations in Connecticut Family Court. They do also have separate involvement in criminal court, like domestic violence cases, but that's not really our area, so I wouldn't be able to educate anybody on how they are involved over there. But Nicole, do you have anything to add beyond what we have already talked about with family relations?
Nope, just that they're a really great, they're an important tool the court has to try and settle cases, and they also play an important role in sort of deciding what track your case is going to end up on from the very beginning. So, take your meetings with them seriously. They're a huge resource, and hopefully they can assist in trying to de-escalate a conflict and get people to an agreement.
Right. So that's going to do it for this week's episode of the Irretrievable Breakdown podcast. That may be it for the month of August. Who knows? Although I may betray you, Nicole, and record with somebody else. We'll see. But I'm kind of leaning towards taking a month off, and we will be back. Not technically still the summer, but it sort of feels like the fall once September is here. So as usual,
with someone else, maybe I'll listen to the episode while I'm on the beach.
Yeah, that sounds like some great beach material. Nothing like listening to this show when you're trying to relax on the beach. So as usual, if anybody has any additional questions, you can contact our office. And if you are looking for representation in a divorce or family law matter here in Connecticut, we would invite you to contact our office as well. Take care, everybody, and enjoy the rest of your summer.